So welcome, everybody. My name is Craig Ettinger. I'm director of the Maine Folklife Center and the Maine Studies program at the University of Maine. And I'm the coordinator of the Jack Pine Project, which this talk tonight is here to showcase one of the workshops of that project. And just as a little bit of background for those who might not be familiar with the Jack Pine Project, last year during the early stages of the pandemic, it was clear to everyone that it was going to have a major impact on society. And one of the groups that was most affected was artists in various media. And I wanted to document that experience, but I also wanted to reach out to artists and other creative types in the state of Maine and work with them, basically hire them for a short term contract to help tell Maine's story through the arts. And I use that term broadly, the performing arts as well as visual arts and writing and other media. So I reached out and asked people to submit ideas for workshops. And one of the ideas that came in was Stephen Legawiec's idea to kind of document the stories of the theater sector itself, or maybe that came about with one of our early conversations, Stephen. And then what happened after that was purely on his part and on the part of the participants in that workshop who worked over a period of, I think, about 10 weeks. Stephen can talk more about that, to tell their stories of their personal experiences of the pandemic and what it meant for them, the losses of jobs and the changes in relationships and how they were spending their time and so forth, and then created videos of those monologues. I got to watch them a month, or actually, it's been a couple months now, I guess, and was just so impressed and moved and amazed by the variety of experiences and the variety of tones that came across. And it helped me to realize and to understand that while this pandemic has affected many, many people, all of us in one way or another, everyone's experience was different. For some people, for some in this group, I know it was a shock and a great loss of things that they had been planning for and expecting to do, major roles that they were about to play. And for others, it provided a time of maybe respite and reflection, which as artists, of course, is needed as well as the performance time. But I was just amazed at that variety. So I'm very glad that tonight we can showcase a few of those videos. And I'm also pleased to say that all 10 of the videos have been posted on the YouTube channel. And Anne Bardaglio, who's been assisting me with this project, is going to post the link in the chat. And that will also be on our website, which you can just go to jackpineproject.com, all one word, and you'll be able to see those videos and see what I'm talking about. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Stephen to kind of introduce a montage of 4 of the monologues, and then we're going to have a panel discussion with Stephen and the 4 actors who are here tonight. Stephen?
Thank you. My name is Stephen Legawiec. I'm a director and a playwright. I'm the author of 30 plays, and of those 30 plays, 6 of them are full-length monologues. The participants of this workshop were chiefly a result of me asking actors who I knew to be a part of it. The idea was to put a voice to how artists, especially performers, had been impacted by the pandemic. Theater is, of course, a communal endeavor, and so the impact was great. I treated this as a writing workshop, which means that we spent all of our time on writing issues and not on performing issues. Although the actors performed the monologues for each other, once they were written, I did not direct them, except occasionally telling them to speed it up. Collectively, the actors had a wide range of writing experience. Some had written full plays, while others had not done any kind of writing at all. That said, even the ones who had done a lot of writing had not written anything like this. It was storytelling, but the story was from one's own experience. Here are the things we concentrated on. First, the story had to be true. Secondly, the story was going to be performed, which meant that it had to sound like something you would say and not like something that you would read or read aloud. Thirdly, the monologue needed to ideally express the personality of the person who created it as much as possible. And lastly, the story needed to take the listener on a journey. And by that, I mean it needed to have a point of view and it needed to have a beginning, a middle, and an end. Um, all in all, we ended up with 11 monologues. One actor chose not to post, which is fine. So the remaining 10 are available for you to view. Watch them all. They're great. And you should know that these were recorded 6 months ago. So they reflect where the creator performer was with their feelings about the pandemic um, as of last October. We're going to show 4 of them today. I could have chosen any 4, but the 4 you were going to see were chosen for one reason, because of the time allotment that we had. But also, these 4 represent different points of view about the pandemic. So here they are. It's Jake Cody, Eliza Robinson, Whip Hubley, and Tess Van Horn.
Fuck! God damn it! Fuck! There. I just had to get that out of my system. I'm sure that's something we can all understand. Please, if you would like, before I get started, I recommend it. Just give a big yell. Pick your favorite cuss. I love the word cuss. Just give it a holler. Show the void who's boss. All right? Welcome. Hello. Here we all are. Are you ready for some COVID-themed artwork? I hope you are, because this right here, this is just the proverbial tip of the iceberg. You are about to get all of your senses obliterated from artists who are starving to get their thoughts and feelings in front of you. I will try to keep things light because boy, oh boy, there are plenty of heavy things happening. The wild thing is COVID would be enough for 1 year. Let's be honest, it would be enough for like 5. But we also have that absolute soul-sucking that is the political world, not to mention the incredibly important and seemingly never-ending battle for racial justice. These are all massive, life-changing events. The year 2020 has gone beyond the kitchen sink, and they are just tearing bits of the house off and just chucking those. I don't know what's left. I'm expecting the pipes and the concrete next. I'm sure just by the end it'll just be dirt clods. Why am I bringing all this up? Well, because I feel like I have to. Context is an important thing, or at least that's what my brain is telling me, and I feel like it is important to inform you, an audience that frankly I've been missing greatly, why it is important to listen to me for the next few minutes. Well, maybe it's not terribly important in the grand scheme of things, which is okay. Not all art has to be terribly important, but I think it is of great importance to use any platform to acknowledge when you can. So all of that being said, before I get into my important commentary on COVID and art, I beg and plead with you to please vote regardless of the year, especially in the not exciting voting years. Also, please know that Black Lives Matter, and saying those words only goes so far. Please donate and support the many organizations who are actively engaged in seeking real change in our very broken system. Okay, I have acknowledged these things that are important. I have given some context, and I feel better. I don't actually feel better because the world is still currently what it is, but boy, do I hope I look back on this and say, there is some hope coming, Jake, you poor, sad man. Let's continue. Let's do a seamless transition into theater and COVID. Do you already sort of have a sense of what's happening when us theater folk can't do theater? A sort of full-on mental manic breakdown? I promise if we see fine on the outside, we aren't. Those who say they are just really fantastic actors, and that goes for all the theater technicians as well, mind you. Turns out many of them are also fantastic actors. So how can I put this in universal terms for non-theater folk to actually... No, fuck it. I'm just going to put it in theater terms, and you're just going to have to take the ride with me. We are all so tired of Zoom readings and trying to be optimistic that if given a safe opportunity, we would absolutely sit through a student-directed production of Romeo and Juliet that was set in Trump's America to make it feel more modern and biting. Capulets are the Democrats, Montagues the Republicans. Really painful obvious stuff. Do you understand? I would applaud this. I would lose my mind being able to witness something like this. Like stand up in my seat with tears in my eyes to be able to safely enjoy that. And theater isn't even my job. I work for a bank. Theater is my dedicated hobby that I sometimes get paid for. So just put yourself for one moment in the character shoes or the technician's Doc Martens of someone whose job is in theater and they literally cannot do it. Their art and their actual money that lets them eat food is just gone. And like maybe 12 people in power care. So, no job, no money for food, and no support. So just like fuck off, I guess. Figure it out. Theater was never a real career, anyways, or at least that is what so many of us were told. All it took was one mismanaged national pandemic to make my high school guidance counselor feel superior. So, for those fellow theater folks out there, just keep surviving, I guess. I don't know how you're doing it. You are far stronger than I am, and you are far stronger than most. Those of you who are not in the theater world but do enjoy it, check in with your local playhouses, your favorite actors, actresses. Please, God, check in on the people who light, costume, set, and sound design, the dramaturgs, the stage managers. Please, God, check in on the stage managers. There are never enough, and I need them to know we are thinking of them. Make them a pie. Take them in. If you're sitting on a pile of money, just give it to the theater because Jesus Christ, they need it. Right. Sorry, I'm supposed to focus on myself here. So what happened to me during this? Well, I feel completely guilty to tell you all this. I bought a house. Yes, the same person who's up here lecturing you all to think more about theater and others. I put my energy into breaking a millennial curse and purchasing an actual honest to goodness home. I think it is very important to emphasize the fact that I feel guilty for buying a home, which I want to break it down. We have a system that currently makes it near impossible for young people to comfortably buy a home, and everything is so bad that if you end up doing it, you feel guilty about it. That is so very fucked. But yet here I am, stewing in my guilt for doing something that was once considered a very normal part of life. I hate everything. So, why am I confessing my guilty sin to you? Well, I came to a pretty big realization during all this. Would I have bought a house if I was actively doing theater? No, I don't think I would have. I would be putting my energy into my passion where I like it to be. But when you take your passion away, well, what do? Especially when going to a bar is off the table, another very important theater activity. Turns out you force yourself to be productive in other wild ways. Is this how normal people are? Like, do you have free time to do things like make dinner for yourself and have a family? You know when you ask one of those normal people at your place of work, hey, what'd you do this weekend? And they just respond with, oh, made some dinner on Saturday and watched the football game. And you think to yourself, that's it? Then your mind starts to wonder about if during the rest of their time they're just like sitting there silently, just like looking at the wall. But then they ask you, what did you do this weekend? And you start with, well, I had a show on Friday night, and we went out to Local 188 after and ended up closing down the bar because I got into this conversation about how you really should be doing more absurdist work in the city. And then Saturday, I woke up at 11 and had to get to a quick rehearsal for a different show. Then me and some friends got together for a quick reading. Then Saturday night was another performance, which after we had the cast party, which was a great time. We actually stayed up singing Queen karaoke till 2. Then slept until I had to get up and rush over to the theater for our closing matinee. Then strike. Then we had another rehearsal for that show I mentioned and got home to sit down and enjoy exactly one episode of a TV show that you've never seen, but you gotta watch it even though you just never will, and I fell asleep. I forgot to do my laundry that I needed to do, but I am ready for a 5-day work week with rehearsals every night. It's that look that they give you in that moment where they think to themselves, this person might be dangerous. But I am saying all of this because any theater person knows the schedule all too well. It's normal. We thrive on it. We need to feel like Rome is burning all around us at all times. And why? I have no fucking clue, but we all do it. And those that don't, for the love of God, tell me your secret. So what happens when you don't have that anymore? The thing I learned from during this is that the omniscient ghoul that is theater will hang around your neck and push you into doing something. Anything. Mine made me decide to buy a house. The only thing that has ever made me more stressed than theater, like hair falling out, gentle sobs in the car, yelling into the abyss, standing outside, just like standing outside stressed. Do you know why the ever-present theater force in my body made me do this? Well, because god damn it, I am now just doing all the theater work in my house. I am lighting designing it, building a set by redoing my fucking bedroom. I'm going through my costume stock and reorganizing and getting rid of things the theater, me, doesn't need. I literally took a hot dog costume out of my closet and said, no, I'll need this. Then I caught myself sound designing as I figured out the best place to set my wireless speaker, standing around the house checking the levels and mumbling to myself, yeah, no, that sounds good. I'm sitting there stage managing all of my bills and paperwork, being the main point of contact for all the goings-ons in my home. I am directing my social distance gatherings so they are a safe distance apart, but pleasant enough so my new yard feels comfortable and the audience will enjoy their time here and want to come back. I am doing the dramaturgical research on my home, making sure it's not haunted. Did I find that someone was killed by a falling tree next door? I absolutely did. Did I also go, well, that's next door, so my house surely isn't haunted? You bet I did. I'm currently in the set dressing period, making sure all of my knickknacks and tchotchkes look good. I'm placing the art in my house in a way that tells a story. Oh, well, this room should be my original art. Oh, and this room should be for pop culture art. It tells a better story this way. Why am I concerned with this? What story is it going to tell? This goddamn theater ghost inside me played me like a fiddle. So, what is it I learned? You can't fucking escape theater. It will hunt you down. Theater is General Zaroff, and your time is Danger Rainsford. But in this most dangerous game, there is no happy ending. The worst part of it all? We love it. We all found different ways to cope and to mourn the loss of something that we all hold so dear. You have to understand, we're all batshit fanatical, but we all pray to that altar of theater. It can be cruel, it is mean, it is unfair, and we have all shed more tears than we ever should for it. But here we are, and now that it isn't there for us, we will still find a way to torture ourselves, and we will love every single minute of it. So go ahead. Ask us what we did this weekend, because the answer may not have theater in it, but I can assure you it will be as long, as wild, and we will always get those same looks from people. Theater may be gone for now, but that damn ghost will always be here. To all of you fighting this fight, good luck. And seriously, to all of you out there who love going to the theater and supporting it, we need you now more than ever, because we are absolutely losing our fucking minds, and I cannot afford any more home renovations.
My interest in theater didn't start with seeing a play or taking a theater class. Those things came later. It started with my friends and me in my backyard after school. The house I grew up in has this big field in the back with a lot of woods. This was my first stage. After school, a whole bunch of neighborhood kids would come over and we'd play all sorts of games. We'd build forts and we'd write these little plays. My favorite of these plays was called Mousetown. There was a father mouse, a mother mouse, a brother mouse, a sister mouse, and a baby mouse who was always getting into trouble. Mousetown could be scripted or it could be a work of improv, depending on the day. I think mostly it started out with a rough outline, but quickly became a work of complete improv the second one of us got bored of the story. The most important feature of Mousetown, though, was that everyone had to have a costume. The costumes could be silly or serious. They could be made of clothing or an old tarp or some other found object, but everyone had to have something to solidify their character. We were our own audiences most of the time. Sometimes a parent would drop by, but more often than not, our audiences consisted of stuffed animals or a porcelain garden gnome. It wasn't fancy, but it was fun. My first experience of theater was quite literally the act of play. As I got older, my experience of theater changed pretty significantly. In high school, I did all of the plays and musicals. I did Shakespeare in the summer. I took community acting classes, and I really loved every second of it. I'm in college now for theater, and it's been a pretty interesting experience for me. I actually started out as an international and global studies major, but then I took a theater class and 2 more and another one after that, and at some point it just started to feel like it made sense for me to switch my major to theater. People sometimes tell me that this is a risky choice. Like, not my parents so much, but other people. I think that they have this idea that because I'm a theater major, I must want to be an actor. But I don't think that's actually what I want to do at all. I mean, I don't know what it is that I do want to do exactly, but I know that I love theater, and I just think that studying something that you care about is never a bad thing. This past summer, I was accepted as an apprentice with the Bread and Puppet Theater Company for the summer of 2020. But as it turns out, the Vermont CDC was not too keen on having 100 or so people from all around the country living together in tents for the summer. So instead, I spent my summer with 8 12-year-old girls in a cabin in Belgrade, Maine, teaching outdoor ed. Because of the COVID-19 protocols, we had a lot of downtime in the cabin that had to be filled with COVID-safe activities. We did all of the normal camp stuff, fort building, Lego making, reading, music, you name it, we did it. But the cabin favorite was to put on performances. We did silly talent shows and skits, and even an original devised piece entitled Kazoo Time. Mostly, Kazoo Time entailed one child screaming to the rest of the children to get their butts onto the front porch because it was time to play the kazoo and act out a scene to the tune and theme of the hit 2012 song, Call Me Maybe, a song which, to my surprise, really made a comeback at camp this summer. It wasn't fancy, but it was fun, and I love a little silly. Because of COVID-19 and the pandemic, and working with children, my experience of theater has become increasingly like that of my childhood, filled with experiment and giggles and costumes swiped from closets and garden gnome audiences. This is the kind of theater that I am interested in doing for the rest of my life.
I'm not sure how I feel about it. I mean, I think I'm supposed to be able to tell you I'm really bummed that I can't express myself through my art and all that, but I was kind of relieved. I mean, I really hesitated to get back into it, the schedule, the stress, all the shit that comes up. But now the pause button's pushed and the frame is frozen and I can really look at it like I never could before because it was always moving so fast and I was just trying to keep my head above water. But now I can zoom in and I can move the picture around and I can really take a look deep into that brush and there it is, that's it. That's why things happened the way they did, why I made all the choices I made and the people I affected along the way. And then the picture blurs again and I'm back not quite knowing how to feel, how I'm supposed to feel. How am I supposed to feel? I don't know where "supposed to" came from, but it sure seems like a lot of my life has been run by those 2 words. I think I always felt like I was supposed to be some other way. I don't know why. Mom, Dad, maybe, probably not their fault, but somewhere along the way, and it's like I've been setting myself up for that feeling ever since, every choice I make. I mean, I can remember the first time I had that feeling that people talk about, being on stage, connecting with an actor, with the audience, having an impact. I was in 8th grade, I played the dragon and the hobbit in a big green suit with felt scales. But I was on it, I was there. There was smoke and fire shooting out of my nose, and I scared the shit out of that little fucker, And I loved it. It was real. But then I didn't follow it up. I didn't pursue it. All through high school, college, I read, I wrote a lot. But it takes discipline to make that stuff happen all the time. And then out of college, then it became something that maybe you could make a living at. And in the beginning, it was all you could want for excitement. You know, I had buddies in film school and they needed you in their movies. And then there was repertory theater in different locations and a play that agents came to see. And the next thing you know, you're on a different level. And, you know, you're meeting and working with people who have made it. And you're thinking, okay, this is it. Things are happening. This is what they're talking about when they say pursue your dreams, you know? And it was good. It was really, really good for a while. And then, oh, what's that? Oh, that's an ego. That's when you start believing your own press, as they say. And that's when things shift, or they did for me anyway. But at some point, though, the things that were exciting and new became expectations, I guess. And then came the marriage and the family and the house and the bills, and the focus got split. And then the fear and the insecurity and the self-doubt and I don't know. Some people can handle it, I guess, but I didn't do so well. I mean, I did really, really badly. And the next thing I know, I'm in survival mode and the crocodile part of the brain is taken over and I'm in a crash and burn. I've got 2 lives going on and I'm not in either one of them. And the worst part about it is that you've got this amazing thing in your life and these beautiful creatures and all this love. And all you can do is resent it. Got so it wasn't worth it. Time was up. But the notion of quitting was to find you for 25 years. To do what, you know? I don't know. I mean, this is why I hate talking about myself. It always sounds like I'm complaining about this amazing life that I've had that I should be grateful for. And I am. I really am. So this play came up. It was a really nice father-daughter relationship to explore, and I was excited about getting back into it. And I thought, you know, I've got some distance on it and things have settled in my life, and I figured I could dabble a little bit without doing any damage. But now the big pause button's on and that opportunity's not there anymore. Which is okay, you know. Sometimes I just want to have dinner with my wife and watch a movie.
Back in May, my boyfriend and I made a bet on a maple tree. How long will it take before it has all its leaves? He said mid-May, I said June. We made this bet after having spent many weeks looking out of our window onto the tree and our street. Any other year at this time, our street would have been entering the early phases of New England tourism. An invasion of young, well-dressed tourists would be coming from Boston or New York, eager to indulge in trendy food and IPAs. I would watch them, their faces deep in their screens, moving across the sidewalks like cattle. But this year it was different. It was quiet. The street was empty, but the world was not. I became especially aware of the birds flying from the maple tree onto our porch and then back to the maple. At times, the sounds of their chirps were so loud, I became amazed that I had never noticed this before. Was it simply no longer cars to interrupt their calls, less people, or was it my own lack of awareness? It was back in March that we first noticed the calm. Despite the profound chaos and fear that the entire world was feeling, our street was quiet once people were no longer commuting to work. I was no longer commuting, having been temporarily dismissed from my freelance directing gig at the local university. This job would have been a big step in my career, an opportunity to finally direct at the university level. Rehearsals had just moved from our cozy dance studio space onto the stage itself. This is the time during any rehearsal process when the actors and the director finally get to see their play come to life for the first time. We had a month before opening, and I was feeling confident and excited. These are the ideal feelings for any director a month before opening night. I was also feeling this rush of legitimacy and importance. With any luck, I was looking at a part-time adjunct teaching position. And eventually, if I played my cards right, a full-time job with benefits. For a theater professional in a state with only one major university system and no PhD, this was pretty much the top of the ladder for me. And although I was thrilled, I was also totally burnt out. It takes a lot of patience and ignorance to believe that one can make it as a theater director. It means sacrificing dinners with your partner if you're lucky enough to have the time to date somebody. It means waiting to have kids until the last minute. It means never having a steady paycheck or health insurance, or even a simple answer at the dentist when your hygienist asks you what you do for a living. It requires always balancing multiple jobs at the same time, with always that lingering fear of being late or just straight up forgetting. It means surrounding yourself with other eager, self-obsessed, and yes, sometimes desperate people, myself included, who are just trying to live their dream. By this point in my personal life, after having directed a solid amount of professional and children's theater, and let's be honest, it was mostly children's theater, I was feeling so fried that the idea of going to see a local production was the antithesis of a relaxing evening. I didn't want to sit inside a dark room and watch people walking and talking on a stage unless I was getting paid to direct it. Frankly, I just wanted to sit on my couch and watch an episode of Schitt's Creek while simultaneously playing Mario World on my phone. And so, having been temporarily dismissed during that fated week in March, after having been told, let's wait until the fall and see what happens, I was left like so many with this knot in my gut and waves of displaced anger, not knowing if I would ever work again. And let me be as honest as possible here. I was still employed in other capacities, and so was my partner. We didn't have kids. We were not essential workers. We were able to pay our mortgage and buy groceries. We had the luxury to stare out of our kitchen window every day without the added fear of being evicted or going hungry. And still, I felt this profound feeling of uncertainty and loss. So we started walking in the woods. I grew up in Maine. I was raised in a small town by aging hippie parents who spent their summers gardening while I mostly stayed inside watching Anne of Green Gables on PBS, like most girls of their generation. Occasionally, I would dress up as an orphan and run away to the woods. There, I would find a fuzzy patch of moss and wait for the fairies to appear. Sometimes I would sing, occasionally talk to myself. Maybe this was my first performance. As I got older, I found myself more and more inside dark theater spaces and further away from the musty sanctuary of the woods. Now, suddenly, as an adult, I was back amongst the trees and pine needles. And this time, I wanted to stay. As March turned into April, I became obsessed with the tracking of spring. I became aware of the minute changes that were happening week to week. The burst of a green in a brown field. The unveiling of a bud in a tree that I had not noticed the week before. I loved the feeling, the slight zephyr of a chill breeze against my ear, and smelling the funk of a pond as it slowly shed its ice. Hearing the chopping of a woodpecker, the chirp of a chipmunk, the grunt of a gray squirrel. To be deprived of sun and green for so many months, I had forgotten what growth looked and smelled like. The season of spring was so much longer than I realized, and I loved every moment of it. And along with these new sensations, I realized that I didn't miss being inside of a theater. I didn't miss going to rehearsal, the commuting, tech rehearsals, the nurturing of actors, the anxiety of opening night. I didn't miss going to see a play either. The giving obligatory compliments to the actors once the play was over, the networking, sitting in boredom in uncomfortable chairs. This really surprised me. Wasn't I supposed to miss this? After having spent years working to carve out a career that felt legitimate and had merit, I had forgotten the feeling of just sitting amongst moss and pine trees without schedule or obligation. No deadlines. No fake smiles. After time in the woods, all I had to do was go home and make dinner. I lost the bet about the maple tree. The leaves were in full abundance by mid-May, and with the leaves, a new onslaught of masked tourists and a steady parade of traffic. It's October now, and the leaves are slowly turning yellow. I still haven't been inside of a theater, and frankly, I still don't miss it. I will long to put on a play eventually, I know. But for now, standing amongst a circle of pines, that's enough.
Wow, I love that ending, Tess, and I love the focus on nature as being one of the main themes coming out of your monologue. I'd love now to just ask a few questions of the panel, including Stephen, and I was jotting down notes as I was going along, but I wanted to start by asking Tess and Whip if you had thoughts on each other's monologues, because Whip, you were writing from a place of an experienced person at one point in your career where you've seen a lot, heard a lot, been perhaps jaded a bit by the some of the things you've experienced in the career. And Tess, at the beginning, at least in the beginning of your monologue, you talk about that new opportunities that you were about to have, which would have ratcheted you into a different kind of position and put you more firmly on a path towards the dramatic life. How did you feel listening to each other's take on this whole thing, even though interestingly enough you both came to a similar conclusion about a certain level of relief about the pandemic and what it meant for you? You're coming out of at different points in your careers, and I just wondered how that felt to you.
Oh, I
It's a great question. I mean, I love your monologue, Whip, and I remember when you shared it in class and how moving it was, and honest, and vulnerable. And I really did appreciate, I think, how much our monologues sort of echo each other. And I think I don't know. I think just sort of that interesting perspective of how we are in different parts of our career, but how those feelings are still. I think maybe if anything, it's like comforting. I think to know that wherever one is at in their career, that tugging, I think that we often feel between the career choices that we need to make, and how that those career choices so rarely support a more conventional life, and that often we have to live within that tugging. um so I felt seen. I felt like I understood.
I did too, Tess. I've obviously forgotten a lot about the experience of doing this thing since I forgot that I had left the Hobbit story in. I had just told Jake and Stephen that whole story again as if it wasn't part of the monologue. So that's either an old man moment or I just can't remember what revision it was, but it really was striking to hear you going through something that I very much experienced, not just from my perspective nowadays, but at that time. And I don't know if that comes across, but it was always a push and pull for me. Um, being an actor, I really think just takes single-minded focus. I mean, I think being anything really that you're devoted to takes single-minded focus. I don't think it's at all exclusive to acting. I mean, I would think writers and visual artists and dancers. I mean, anybody who really focuses on something is going to have that struggle in life, of putting the other pieces and paying attention to the other pieces. And when you're talking about kids and a wife and the house or a spouse and all of the stuff that comes up, it's really a struggle. It is kind of a relief. I really got carried along with your revelation that you had that, that wasn't all there was to life, because we lose sight of it.
I
Yeah.
want to welcome Seth Rigoletti, who just joined us, who was another one of the participants in the workshop. You're all of the at least three of the four monologues had a very interesting sense of guilt. There was Jacob first starting us off with the guilt of having financial security, so much so that he could purchase a house, which he's probably very glad he did right now, looking at house prices in Maine at this point. But what I'm hearing Tess and Whip say also is that yes, there's guilt, but almost a survivor's guilt that we weren't the ones who suffered the most. And in some ways, the pandemic provided something which perhaps we always wanted to do, which was the opportunity to step away from this career or avocation that has incredible demands and forces you. And Jacob said this as well in a funny way, I think, but it's like a very strong power and force. And you had no choice. I mean, in normal times, it would have drawn you and pulled you in and back into it, and all of a sudden, you didn't have to do it. But there was an element of, I feel guilty about it, but what can I do? So, can you guys talk about the guilt aspect here, and especially the ones who had financial security, um, compared to others in your field, I guess, how that has made you feel? Jacob, do you want to start on that? Because you really had a lot to say about that from the banker's perspective.
Yeah, I mean, it's weird. I mean, I never
in a million years saw myself being a banker. I went to school. I got my degree in theater. You know, I my what I when people ask me what I do, I think of theater first before I say I'm in finance. And even saying I'm in finance feels like wrong. It feels bad coming off of my tongue. And so truly, I was in a position where I was doing well during it, and seeing how COVID affected so many people, and not just COVID, but as I mentioned in it, like everything political wise that was going on, and everything for social justice wise that's been going on. There's a lot happening, and it was I think it was easy to feel guilt. Like there was a prevalent emotion to feel, and so like of course I think it's going to be a theme for all of us. What happens when your mind isn't going a million miles a minute and you're busy with 80 things doing? You start thinking about everything that's around you, and you start seeing things better, and you start having a moment to reflect, and with the reflection what happens, especially in such a strange time in the history of the world. Like of course guilt's going to happen. Even if we're not guilty, we're going to feel guilt. Like that's just how it looks. It's just how it was. It's how it is still. It hasn't left me, at least. When people say like how's your home, I immediately go like, oh my god, I bought a home and people were dying. Like that's like I can't help it. I can't help but feel these things. And it's, you know, it still happens. Here we are. I felt guilty for getting my vaccine when I could sign up for the vaccine. I was like, I shouldn't. There's still like you can't stop it. You can't stop it. With so much time comes more time to think. And I think all of us can sometimes, that too much time to think is, I think in the long run very good for you, but in that short term you have to get through the bad stuff first. So
Stephen, is it more difficult in some ways for people, and Tess as well, who are responsible for a production and had to make those calls or cancel a production that had been planned, knowing that it's going to affect the livelihoods of actors and tech people and others in a production? Do you think there's those folks within the theater sector who are feeling that sense of guilt more directly because they know how it affected people underneath them?
Uh, I think that's the case. I spent a lot of 2020 just reading the headlines of giant theaters that had to um, lay off 80% of their workforce. You know, we Maine is an unusual place to do theater because there are so few full-time theater people here. Like Jake, most of the theater community is doing something during the day, and then they do theater with the rest of their time. But when you get to a um, larger place with um, uh, theaters that have closed down or that have just about laid off everybody, it's a huge upheaval. I mean, I was talking to a friend of mine. I'm not up on this, so maybe somebody can update me. But several months ago, my friend who lives in New York, like who is a theater person, was talking about Broadway coming back, but they're only able to fill a third of the seats because of the social distancing. And she said selling a third of a Broadway house is not even enough money to keep the show going. You know, so there's so much still to be solved, and it's uh, you know, I run a theater, and we're so lucky to be a tiny theater. You know, but the large theaters, I feel for them.
I wanted to talk a little bit about the things that kind of helped you get through this in a way. And Eliza, your piece was had a beautiful arc from your story about Mousetown, and then coming back at the end to kind of describing that process of returning to childhood in a way. And Tess, you kind of mentioned that as well. But I wonder if you could talk about how this time was useful in returning to a kind of a core of emotions or imagination, and that kind of internal artist within you that performed long before you were in front of an audience, told stories in your mind, performed in your mind. How important was this downtime for kind of re-nurturing that part of yourself?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think I really was incredibly fortunate to have this experience. I mean, sort of going back to talking about being fortunate to, just have a job during the summer was great, but then to also, I think, get to work in a space that was so flexible and working with children who were so imaginative and really inspiring in a lot of ways because, although their lives had certainly been, greatly affected by COVID, in some ways they were protected by their families and by, the infrastructure by which we protect children, in society. And yeah, they just like really came with a readiness to, like have a great time this during this period of the summer. And it really, allowed me to get to experience that through them. And then to a certain extent, I'm really fortunate. I'm a senior in college right now. So I then got to return to school this fall and continue taking theater classes and, continue to work in theater spaces through my, educational institution, which I think is perhaps sort of unique to students or people who have this sort of infrastructure around them. So yeah, I feel really fortunate that I got to have that time, and then also fortunate that I was in the position that I was in order to then come back to school and continue doing theater. And I also think, and I mentioned this in my monologue, but I don't know, I don't really know what I want to do in life. I don't know if I'll, pursue theater long term, but I think that having this time over the summer, like, was a real opportunity to get to see that, whatever I do, it can sort of be a part of, can be woven into the fabric of whatever career I have. And that it doesn't, that, my love of theater, love of performance and art doesn't have to be exclusive to working in a theater, that it can be much more expansive than that. So yeah, I just feel grateful for that experience.
Do you have any intention to work with kids again in theater? Has this experience of summer camp last summer changed your thinking about that?
Maybe it was a great experience, but definitely a challenging one as well. But yeah, I would definitely be open, and yeah, I really, really enjoyed working with the kids. So yeah, who knows? We'll see.
Were there other things, and I'll throw this question to Seth as well, but were there parts of your crafts collectively, besides the set decorating skill that Jacob has been applying to his house, but were there parts of your craft that you worked on honing or maybe approached a little bit differently, having time on your hands? Were there playwrights whose work you delved into that you always wanted to, and this kind of opened up that opportunity for you?
Well, I'll just quickly say that this class really opened up like uh, a new avenue for me in terms of writing. I've been writing a lot since this class, and it was just such a great way to jump back into it and to kind of think of myself as a playwright, which I had not really done before. So that's a thank you to Stephen and for uh, this program. Didn't mean to throw a pitch there or a shout out, but
We'll take it. Is
yeah.
there anything that you'd care to share about what you're working on, or is that
Oh yeah,
not for
no,
public?
no, no. But yeah, it's become part of my routine now, which is great.
I'll
Okay.
jump in and say the same, Tess. I've been writing more than I've ever written, and which is really nice. It's something that I've been always enjoyed, and I've always been really proud. Like, there's a sense of pride whenever I have completed something, and I've been lucky to do a couple small things that I've written in front of public. But I never, if someone were asking me what do you do in theater, playwright was never an answer for me. So it really has been nice to sort of reflect and find the joy that I find with writing more, and this was part of that. It was just, it's kept me um, doing it more and more, which I've been really enjoying. And it's just been a good way to keep that sort of theater brain alive whilst not being able to be in front of people. So I second what Tess says.
I also wanted to say that, and I heard this comment a lot while we were doing it. 2 months is a long time for us to meet weekly. And I really looked forward to it. I can't remember even the day of the week. Was it Wednesday or Thursday? But anyway, whatever day that we were meeting, I looked forward to it. And so many people said that that was something that they looked forward to, uh, even just to kind of interact with another dozen people and commiserate about how we were feeling about the pandemic. It was very, um, it was kind of healing for us. The writing aside, from my, I didn't write anything, but from my point of view, just being able to get together with a group was really uh, important and strong for me.
Stephen, had you taught writing courses before, or courses in dramatic monologue specifically?
I had not. I had taught courses in directing and uh, and acting and theater in general. Um, I'm always. I have a couple of friends who write, and uh, whenever I would finish a play, I would talk to them about the process of writing the play. So I feel like that my writing life, at least as far as a couple of my friends are concerned, is very much me talking about the process and how it works and what are the problems and what makes it better. So it's almost like that's a conversation I've been having with myself for 30 years, but I haven't specifically taught a writing course like this.
Did you get any ideas throughout the workshop for characters in your next play, or lines of dialogue that were inspired by something someone said?
I recently have been thinking about my process of writing plays. I can't remember. Somebody recently asked me um, how that happens. And normally, I would spend 6 months just trying to come up with an idea. The comedian Ricky Gervais, I love this quote of his. He said, "Coming up with an idea is so hard that if I come up with one any day, then I'm done for the day. Like I've done my work for the day." So it would take me a very long time to come up with an idea, and then it would take longer to work out the plot. And then once that was done, the writing of the play would happen just in a few days. And I think during the pandemic, I started keeping a notebook of possible play ideas, or things that might turn into a play, and none of them have turned into a play. But being a part of this got me thinking that I should start writing something again.
Jacob, I wanted to ask you a question about the emotional quality of your piece. And my question is whether it's more of a challenge to write a personal piece like this in which and perform it in which you're expressing your own emotions, or to read somebody else's lines and put yourself in the head of a character and express the emotions that that person is supposed to be feeling, because your piece really resonates with a kind of an emotional, processing that you're going through.
Um, it, it's interesting because I would say that it was hard. It was harder to write the piece and to connect with myself and get the piece down. But once I was doing it, like they were my emotions. It was actually pretty easy. Also, to be honest, I'm not someone who's afraid of expressing his own emotions, so I have that going for me. To be totally honest, so I might have a leg up in this sense. But I'd say it was harder to write. And then the process of doing was easy for me. Whereas when I'm doing a play, like it takes like it's you can find the emotions. You can through rehearsal, you can find everything and you work. It's a team effort, right? In plays, that's what I miss the most, is the team effort of everything. Is you have your director to lean on, you have your scene partners to lean on, you have someone to work with, you have a dramaturg to give you information, you have the light to make you feel like you're in a different place, you have a costume to make you feel like you're a different person. And being stripped down and sitting literally at the same exact, clearly not much has changed. I'm in the same exact spot I was when I did the monologue. It's tough in that sense, where it's a raw nerve. You're alone with your thoughts. All you have is this little dinky camera right here that you can play off of. So I'm glad that you felt like an emotional journey, because I remember recording a couple in a row and being like, no one's going to buy this. It's just me in my kitchen, which is tough. But getting there while doing it wasn't hard, because I still feel all those things. Those are my emotions, and it was nice to sort of have an outlet with them, as opposed to me just like grunting at the birds at the bird feeder in the backyard by myself for hours. Not that I do that a ton, just every so often.
Well, I'd like to applaud everyone in the group, because it's one thing to write a monologue for a character, whether you're playing it or not. It's another thing to write something where there is no curtain between you and what you're expressing, that everyone here really dug deep and chose to express it in such an extraordinary way, which is, I don't think of myself as an actor, but trying to put myself in that position, it's very daunting to imagine it, and everyone did it so wonderfully. And I also don't want to say that was necessarily easy. That, well, of course they're actors, of course they're going to talk about themselves. That's not the case. That the material that these actors chose to record and put out there is very personal material, and that is, and I just think that's very singular, and I think it's very brave. So I just wanted to say that.
Well, and I really missed having a director, like, a lot. It was really challenging to perform it all by myself. That was a reminder again of like how important all of the roles are for putting on any kind of performance. Having that other set of eyes. I made many takes, did a lot of cussing.
Did you have to jump back and forth between the director role and the actor role as you were doing those takes?
I was just a big hot mess. Yeah, it was a great time.
How did you guys sort of prepare yourself for that when you were performing the pieces? Because all of you have worked in stage, I believe. Whip, you've done a lot of television work. So how comfortable were other people doing it into a camera? Was it similar to a Zoom call? Did you imagine a full-fledged TV or film camera in front of you? How did you kind of focus your energies as far as how you were going to perform it and to whom you were performing it?
I had a interesting experience, because I have this kind of mind-numbing job in the construction industry, and Seth introduced me to this class and to Stephen, and I've had really good in-depth conversations with Seth about this process of that struggle that we were talking about before, being pulled, and so in this job, I don't have any opportunity really to dive into this stuff. And so when Seth suggested this to me, I hesitated and hemmed and hawed about it, and then took the leap. At first, I thought it was a monologue class where we would be working on monologues. And then I realized we had to write it. So that was the second nightmare. But the thing is that where I ended up doing this thing was because I didn't want to do it at home. My wife's working at home now, and I wanted to be able to just really not have anybody around. And so I found this weird office upstairs in the warehouse at my job, and I got a tripod and put an iPhone on it, and then I had a little remote clicker so that I could just make it as much of a filming experience as possible, without, it could be just like I could hear, okay, camera, action, and I could just be there for that. And it really did. It felt like that to me a little bit. And then I didn't, I had the privacy I needed, and I was able to, I did it over and over and over and over again too, until, basically I got the lines right, and then I kind of moved on, because eventually I had to send it to Stephen. I think it was really, really late anyway, but I really appreciated Seth turning me onto this thing, because this has sparked it for me. And then after that, another workshop came up. So you were asking what we were doing during that time. And I just got through with a scene study workshop that two young actors were teaching. And that got me going again. So I feel like I'm recognizing that I always recognize that this has been missing from my life currently. And I'm really glad to be getting it back a little bit. There's, that's going again, because just like Jake's talking about, and Eliza too, this stuff is really important. It really is. I mean, I can pretend it's not, and I can say, I don't want to, have that struggle anymore, but I need it. I need this in my life. There's no doubt about it.
Seth, what has your experience been of the pandemic, and how did that play out in your monologue?
Thank you. Hi, everybody. Sorry I was late. I I think that a big part of the pandemic for me was teaching my 16-year-old son how to drive a standard. So we would spend, when things were in lockdown, we would spend hours on the road. Just, there was nobody on the road, so it was pretty amazing time to learn how to drive. And I think that the thing about the process since doing the monologue is just really, for me, being so much aware of the lack of collaborative creative people that I have sort of on a daily basis in my life. It just feels very disconnected a lot of times. I do a lot of work with businesses, and it just sometimes, like, after a while, I was like, wow, that was really refreshing to be around all these people talking about art and thinking about art and creativity and vulnerability. That was really fabulous. And then it's really got me thinking a lot about the art of theater and sort of what it means to express yourself, and been reading books and thinking about I have a lot of ambivalence towards the art form that comes out probably in my monologue, but I really, seeing all of these folks perform, and also seeing the process everybody went through in the group, there wasn't a single monologue that I wasn't blown away by, and that I wasn't deeply moved by. And it's not just because the monologues themselves were amazing, it's because just seeing the people go through the process and expose themselves. I know I'm answering a lot of different questions that you asked over the period of time that I've been here, but it was so amazing to me to watch that, and I was so moved by that. And then I've just been sort of thinking, it's changed the way during the pandemic I've been thinking about connection and personal expression and how hard it is. It's just so hard. We just don't have at least not in this country, we don't really have a society set up for that kind of genuine, spontaneous creation. So I'm really grateful again to all of you and to Stephen for shepherding us through this and giving us an opportunity to do the work.
You raised some great points there, but the one that sticks in my mind is this idea that when actors are fully consumed within the world of acting and theater and so forth, there's almost a shell of relationships because you're constantly playing a role and learning a role and performing a role. And I wonder if the past year has, just to play off on your idea there, has changed the way you do interact with people. I know that with masks and social distancing and so forth, we're all separated from people in new ways, but I'm just wondering if it's taken you to a quieter place, a less performative place in your lives where you find your relationships changing.
That's such a interesting, yeah, that's interesting to me. I don't know if anybody else has a comment about that, but I do think that there's something about actors in that performative space where oftentimes we're all, at least in my experience, we're all sort of like showing off all the time, and we're all sort of performing, and there's this like insecurity and this like excitement and this, but it is also such an incredibly intimate, bizarrely intimate space. And so yeah, you're wearing costumes and you're playing all these roles and you're performing all the time, but you're really telling people and exposing yourself to people in a way that you don't do in normal life. I mean, the people I interact with on a daily basis, if I let even a little bit of that out, they think I am so strange. And so I think there's something I miss. I don't know if I could ever bring all of that into everyday life. Maybe not in Maine. Maybe I could if I lived in New York. But it's weird. Like I just love you guys so much. I just miss hearing everybody's craziness. It's okay, I say it that way. I'll turn it over to whoever else wants to.
Frankly, I'm just mostly upset that we've been given so much free time as theater makers, and we're not allowed to see people during that free time. Because I don't know about all of you, but I sort of, in my circle of friends, famously made fun of for saying I have rehearsal, or always being late to birthday parties because I was, again, at a show or something. And so it's kind of a bummer that we were forced to have this removed time as a whole, and it would have been really nice to see all of these people not in the theater setting, but as outside of that, and to get to know them without that sort of forced backdrop of theater, and being able to actually use our evenings to make time for the family dinner that you said you really wish you could go to, but you can't, or all these various things that we always miss because we are shackled to the theater. And it's just this weird, like, we have all this time, but that time wasn't social time. It was very reflective and sort of within your very close bubble of time. And sure, things changed. I mean, like, they had to have, but everything changed. But it was this weird crossroads of like, it's the Twilight Zone episode. There was finally time, even though, you know,
Burgess Meredith, yes.
Exactly. So that, I think that sums it up nicely.
Good reference. Did your theater backgrounds, and I'm going out on a limb here, but has it helped you at all in the limited way that people can communicate now, whether it's because we're doing it through Zoom or because we're doing it through masks? You guys have all been trained in performing within roles, sometimes behind masks, actually. I know I saw Stephen's production last summer in Camden. Did that give you an advantage in being able to express things to people, either through a camera or through a mask, that other people like me couldn't do because we didn't learn to use our eyes to express ourselves, or our voice, or our body language, or other things? Did you guys find yourself drawing up on those things at all? And if it's no, just tell me no. That's fine.
Probably without me realizing it, I think it's just sort of ingrained in us as trained actors. We were forced to make eye contact with people. We're forced to be expressive and use our hands, right? We're trained to do that. So I think probably it's helped, and I probably don't think about it.
I feel the same exact way. I think it's something that is just sort of comes second nature. I was very lucky, and when Stephen first came to Maine, the first show I did with Stephen and his wife was Fafalo, which is the show you saw earlier. They did it for the first show here, and I did a whole summer of mask work, and it seems like wild to think that I spent a summer working with my eyes and stuff, and I'm certain that's all dormant knowledge that I have used without realizing when I'm trying to get people to understand my feelings with everything covered. So
Right. I just have 2 more questions, and then I'll let you guys go for the night. One is both Tess and Eliza really talked about nature, and Tess, your piece especially. And I'm just wondering. I know things have changed back now in some ways, as you say. There are more tourists coming back and more noise and so forth. But how important was nature for each or any of you in terms of helping you get through this just emotionally?
I mean, it's absolutely necessary, and I do feel very much like I am very changed. That I will continue to prioritize being out in it, and now that it's so fully in me, I can't imagine a life without it.
I think it was interesting for me because much of the theater that I've done in my life has been outside. I was a part of this youth theater group when I was young, that performed outside, and then I performed for 4 years. I did Shakespeare with Stephen outside, and I've performed on the college campus that I am on outside. And I think, I think it was nice to get to spend some time outside doing theater that was just different than what I had done before. And I think that nature has always been a place of theater for me. So yeah, it was nice to get to return to that for a bit.
I'll ask a final question, and it's a 2-part question, but I'm going to ask it of everyone, so I'd like to just do a little go around here and tell me if you have anything booked, if you know of a theater that's opening, you have a role or a directing gig or something like that lined up, and what are you most looking forward to when we do return to some sort of normalcy when it comes to theater in the state of Maine? Whip, let me start with you.
Hi. Well, I just talked to Stephen yesterday, and I am going to work with him up in Camden this summer in his play Aquitania, and I'm very excited about it. It's a beautiful play, really is, and it's actually a beautiful role, I think. And I've explained the whole thing to him. It's a little bit of back and forth in terms of my work, but I think it's time for me to make that move.
And what are you most looking forward to about that?
Well, I think there's poetry in it that's going to be really beautiful to speak, and I really look forward to connecting with the other actors. I'm working with 2 actresses. One of them is a young girl, and I love working with younger people. And then the other actress will be her later on in life, and no, I'm that connection. I'd say that's the main thing is that I always go back to. I mean, it can come out of nowhere. Sometimes I've had it sitting in a class reading from a script where all of a sudden I'm connecting with somebody, And that's one of the challenges on the Zoom thing, because, you know, I'm not ever really looking into somebody's eyes here. And that in this little scene class that I just did, I realized that was a challenge, because that human connection is what I really look forward to in the whole process.
Tessa, what about you? Have something lined up?
I do actually. I will be directing a short piece with the Maine Playwrights Festival, a play by Carolyn Gage called Miss Legawiec Announces the New Season. Emily Groats will be, it's a one person, it's a monologue. So Emily Groats will be performing it. And that and all of the plays will in fact be filmed. So we're rehearsing it, I'm directing it as though it were a play, but then they will all be filmed and then available to the public at some point soon. So I'm very excited. And in fact, we will be doing some in-person rehearsals even, which will feel like almost like the real thing. So.
And what do you most look forward to being back in that active role?
Gosh, I mean, we started rehearsals just a few days ago, and it just felt so good to start the beginning process of any play in which anything is possible, and you know, we can think big, and then also the analyzing and contextualizing and really digging into the text and looking at all of the problems that we now are going to work together to solve. I love that part of the process.
That's great. Jake, what about you?
Oh, nothing necessarily lined up right now. I'm a member of the Mad Horse Theater Company in South Portland, and we're always cooking up something. We've been weathering the storm pretty well, been doing quite a bit of Zoom stuff, which has been a blast. So I've actually been able to create some art through that, and we've done some really good work through them, and I'm really proud of what we've been doing through the whole pandemic, and I'm excited to sort of continue that steam moving forward. I got asked to sound design God of Carnage at Portland Players, which is great, just to, even though it's more sitting in front of a computer, it's fun to, I also sound design, which I love doing. And other than that, just sort of seeing what comes along, you know, it's just exciting to even have the potential for opportunity again. And what I was most excited about is right before sort of everything went belly up, we'll say, I got to direct a show at Mad Horse called Radiant Vermin, and I really, really, really loved that. It was as much as I love theater, the act of directing that play was a real spark for me, and I found like some real joy in it. So I'm really excited to sort of dive back into directing and getting to work and create with friends again. And I mentioned earlier, but like the teamwork aspect of it, I love being among friends. And then the last thing I'm most excited for is the time after we go see a show and sit at a bar and talk about it.
Gotcha. Eliza, it is Eliza, right? Or yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have something coming up?
I don't have anything coming up this year that I know of, but I will be at Bread and Puppet as an apprentice next summer. So I'm looking forward to that. And I'm just excited to get to see people again, get to hug people, get to work with people in person. So pumped about that.
And working with giant puppets, so can't beat that in Vermont, of course. Very nice. Seth, how about you?
I don't have anything. Thanks. I don't have anything lined up, and I'm looking forward to. It's funny. I haven't really looked forward to maybe seeing a play in a long time, and I'm actually, this pandemic has made me thinking about how much I miss live performance, and so I'm looking forward to the day I can go to a play. That would be nice.
That's good. You're a theater lover, regardless of which side of the curtain you're on, I guess. Huh?
Yeah.
Stephen, what about you? I think you have some productions planned for the summer, then, right?
Right. Yeah. So we're doing a play called Aquitania. It's a play that every time I do a play, I think of Jake, because Jake was also in Aquitania when we did it in 2012. It's a play I wrote. We've done it twice before. I'm excited because having done it twice before, I know that audiences really love it. And and if we did a play last year, we can do a play this year, um, barring any huge shutdown that comes along. So that's going to be mostly in Camden, beginning at the end of July, although we are touring it around the state like we did Buffalo. And the thing that I'm most looking forward to is being able to connect with an audience again. It's so gratifying to give something to the audience and have them receive it in a good way. So that's why I'm in theater in the first place.
That's wonderful. And I have to say, because my wife and I went down to Camden last summer for your play in the amphitheater there, and it was just wonderful, even at that point. And it had only been a few months at that point, not a year, since we had seen live theater. But what a wonderful experience that was on a beautiful evening. So I want to thank you and the others for doing this. For those of us who simply enjoy theater and the theater arts, to be able to see productions again will be very meaningful to a lot of us. So thank you all. Thank you guys all for joining me tonight. This has been a real pleasure to meet you and to talk with you and hear more about your experiences. And I want to thank Sam Overlock from the Hutchinson Center and the staff there for helping us put this on, and Ann Bardaglio as well for coordinating this event. Thank you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you
All
so
right.
much.
Take care. I hope to see you in a theater sometime soon.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye.
Good night.